Kudashev, and Admiral Zadorin, who is our military attache with the embassy. And it is a very important article because it dwells, it's called 75th anniversary of the great victory, shared responsibility to history and our future. And it dwells a lot on the war issues, but also on the issues of peace. So I would like to request you, Honorable Ambassador, to deliver a brief welcoming remarks.
Evgeny, thank you so much. Thank you so much, dear friends. It's an honor for me to be present with this round table and to welcome our distinguished speakers, our Indian friends, and naturally Mr. Konstantin Zadorin, our defense attaché. To introduce myself, my name is Nikolay Kudashev. I'm National Ambassador for the Republic of India since the year of 2017, almost 3 years already. Well, thank you for giving me an opportunity to deliver a couple of brief introductory remarks, and I should say a couple of words just about the substance of our bilateral ties with India. This relationship is of a very special nature. It is of a special nature because this is a relationship of strategic partnership, and this is a relationship of a special nature because it is a relationship of especially privileged strategic partnership, which means that this relationship is unique and second to no one. This year, in October, we will celebrate the 20th anniversary of our strategic partnership, of our emerging strategic partnership. Well, what are the key dimensions to our relationship? The key dimensions to our relationship are close and continuous dialogue between our two leaders, President Vladimir Putin and Prime Minister Modi. They are in constant touch currently on the phone. They are exchanging letters, messages, and on. And there is a really special chemistry emerging between them at the personal level. Then this special, unique kind of relationship would also envisage close cooperation at the global arena, at the global stage, upon the critical issues of nowadays, like strategic stability. This relationship would also envisage facing together most acute challenges and threats like COVID pandemic, like terror, like drugs, like crime, like climate change, and you name it. This special kind of relationship would also envisage close cooperation upon the emerging regional architecture of security and cooperation. But aside of it, I could guess that there is another very dramatic, very important, but should I say less known page in our relationship, our wartime cooperation. After all, we fought together, Russia and India fought together at the southern theater of the Second World War. Our military people met there in Iran, precisely, and together we've been securing the lanes of communication along the land-lease programs to make the victories at the European theater easier. To testify to this unique relationship would be the participation of India's contingent in the Moscow Victory Day parade very recently. Very nice parade and very impressive India's contribution. To testify to this unique nature of our ties would be the congratulatory message of Prime Minister Modi, Prime Minister Modi to President Putin to celebrate the 75th anniversary of victory and this larger I mentioned is dwelt upon in the article of President Putin, the 75th anniversary of the great victory, shared responsibility to history and our future, which is, as far as I understand, the topic for discussion today, to be discussed today. I will just quote a few from the substance of the article to maybe to provide some kind of food for thought or some kind of a feedback for distinguished participants, and to underline the importance of this theme. Well, President says that the 20th century brought large-scale and comprehensive global conflicts. And in 1945, nuclear weapons capable of physically destroying the Earth also entered the scene. In other words, the settlement of disputes by force has become prohibitively dangerous. And the victors in the Second World War understood that. They understood and were aware of their responsibility towards humanity. Thus, the United Nations emerged as a fruit of our common victory. Of course, we can see that the United Nations system currently experiences certain tension in its work and is not as effective as it could be, but the United Nations still performs its primary function. The principles of the United Nations Security Council are a unique mechanism for preventing a major war or a global conflict. And this is our common responsibility to keep it going. It is a duty of ours, all those who take political responsibility and primarily representative of the victor powers in the Second World War, to guarantee that the system is maintained and improved. Today, as in 1945, the President would underline, it is important to demonstrate political will and discuss the future together. Drawing on a shared historical memory, we can trust each other and must do so. That will serve as a solid basis for successful negotiations and concerted action for the sake of enhancing the stability and security on the planet, for the sake of prosperity and well-being of all states. Without exaggeration, it is our common duty and responsibility towards the entire world, towards the present and the future generations, Russia and India included nation. Dear friends, thank you so much for giving me the floor, and I would be most willing to cede it to the next speaker. Thus again, thank you, and I am honored.
Thank you very much for your remarks, and may I please request Admiral Zadorin to present his thoughts and remarks on our topic.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency Ambassador, my dear friends. So I am Konstantin Zadorin, Russian Defense Attache. I am in the country since September 2017, and I should say that our just military and military technical cooperation with India very close, time-tested and present. So it started during World War II when Indian soldiers participated in it and made a great contribution to our common victory over the Nazi Germany and militaristic Japan. 75 years ago, the Great Patriotic War ended. The Soviet Union won a decisive victory over Nazism. Overcoming incredible difficulties, preserving humanity in the harsh environment of those years, the fraternal peoples of the Soviet republics, with the significant support of the Allies, liberated the occupied lands of Europe and gave millions of lives a chance to exist in peace and harmony. Since 1945, more than our generation had changed. However, Russian and the CIS, Commonwealth of Independent States countries, continue to honor the memory of the warriors, liberators who gave us life. Love of the motherland, family, preservation of the memory of our ancestors, and respect for history in our society are a solid foundation for the sovereignty and territorial integrity of Russia today. For my family, the war is the death of my grandfather, a Red Army captain in the battle for Leningrad. He was posthumously awarded the Order of the Red Banner. My mother, who has already passed away as a girl, worked for 60 or 80 hours at a military factory in the location, and in the fact fed her family, her sick mother and younger brother. Her older brother, my own uncle, fought in the war with militaristic Japan and told about it. We carefully store the family archive and memory contain everything related to this difficult but important time for our country and my family. Unfortunately, we're all witnessing an aggressive campaign in a number of states for the demolition of monuments to fallen Soviet soldiers, attempts to total revision of the beginning, course and results of the World War II. Some of them have gone very far in their ambitions at the legislative level. They claim that the war was allegedly started by the Soviet Union. Another concern is the false claim that the USSR committed a treacherous attack on Japan in August 1945. It is worth emphasizing that the so-called treacherous attack on the militaristic Japan is out of the question. In full compliance, Moscow denounced the pact in accordance with international law on neutrality for months before the declaration of war. The victory over Japan put an end to the long-term Japanese oppression of the peoples of the region. Korea was occupied by Japan since 1910, Manchuria since 1931, and a significant part of China since 1937. At the same time, Moscow itself, despite the readiness of the Allies to compensate for the entry of the USSR into the war by annexing new vast territories, even at the stage of negotiations, refused any annexations, starting only that it wanted to return the southern Sakhalin, which was turned over by the Japanese in 1995, and the Kurils ceded to them in 1875. It is lightning rope of the Red Army, of the most powerful and combat-ready formations of the Japanese land forces, influenced Tokyo's decision to surrender. Such facts are difficult to refute. They're based on documentary evidence, also my uncle, and eyewitness accounts of these events. However, their restoration has a significant impact on the foreign and domestic policy of the some states. That is why, in the interest of building multilateral international relations based on mutual respect and trust, it is essential not to allow attempts to rewrite history, to rely solely on archival materials and testimonies of contemporaries, and to exclude any ideological and politicized speculation that may lead to the growth of radical and revanchist moves. We must always remember what price we owe got the victory. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you very much. So from your remarks, Ambassador and Admiral, we can see that the events of 75 years ago, they are not a far-gone history. This is an important part of our today's world. And in this connection, may I please request Colonel Pillai to share with us, what do you take out? What is your take on this article?
Firstly, I would like to acknowledge I speak from an experience just like President Putin has. His family in the war, my family also took part in the World War II, and they were involved in this war. And we know how much is being part of our story, family story also, how much Russia has done to stop the juggernaut that was the German machinery. It was only the Russian effort that actually stopped. The first defeat was faced by Nazi Germany, by the Russians, this historic, the heroic fight that they put up. Repeated the first time after, the ease with which Nazi Germany ran over the parts of Europe, and the reason they were unable to find an alliance to find an enemy. Everyone was privately negotiating with them, whether it be Britain or Poland. It was each one for himself, while Russia always advocated it apart. And ultimately, Russia paid the price for stopping a wolf that they recognized very early. And the ease with which Poland and France and everyone else felt, and no one else came to the rescue. And they had it's only when they came into, and Operation Barbarossa was not aimed at just looking at territory. It looked at Russia in terms of the hardworking people that were there, the extremely rich agriculture and the soil and the resources, the Caucasian oil which was required for the so if you look at it, there was a plan, and had they taken control, had the Russians not stood up to the Soviet Union, the history of the world would have been different. They would have come into Asia, like I remember Indian troops and my own battalion participated in providing support to the oil that was going from Iran and other places. And if you even look at it in terms of the effort that the Russians, just not just in terms of life and heroism. If you look at the entire machinery, I think 3/4 of the entire Nazi Germany's machinery was against the Soviet Union. Rest of them can't claim credit for having won the. And even if you want to see, you want to acknowledge that the European victory was because of Operation Overlord in 1944, June 6th, Russians had a great part to play even in that, because they diverted a large amount of the Nazi troops in an operation which was there. Even they moved the troops against Japan. And so the sad part is, just like we have also contributed in great measure, Indians have contributed in great measure to World War I and World War II, but we were forgotten because we were not belonging to the club. We were on the other side after the World War was over. We were on the other side of the alliance, which was an alliance which was to stand up against certain fundamental principles that we believed in. And Indian contribution to the World War also, like despite being the largest single contributor to the war effort, we were also. It's only in 2004 that they put up memorial gates in London. And even if you watch any of the popular movies that have come up, you have so many American movies, but because of the Cold War, we don't Marshal Zhukov or those people who actually stood up and took on the thing. And despite even Hitler had dug in heels and Manstein was told that he can't withdraw. But these are not household names. We know all about Eisenhower, Montgomerys and Pattons and everything. How many of us know about Marshal Zhukovs and about the other heroes of the war, Yeremenko and others? It's not a common name, but the fact is, if the Nazis were stopped, the first defeat was faced by the Nazis by the Soviet effort. And it didn't get the place in the narrative because we didn't belong to a particular, kind of a narrative that they wanted to show. Like if you calculate, like they say that Americans send in a lot of war effort. But if you read President Putin's speech, it says 7% of the material assistance came from that. The Soviets manufactured. People worked 24 hours in manufacturing T-34 tanks, the largest number of the tank battles that have taken place. The kind of destruction, the air force that was there. It was something that, this is something that we should all be grateful, because the world is not under a Nazi this thing. It is only because of the Soviet Union that stood up against them. The Soviet Union that stood up against the Japanese. The Soviet Union that diverted the Nazi when Overlord was happening here. These are not, like everyone talks about June 6, 1944, Normandy landings, but nobody remembers the effort that is there. And this narrative building has to change in many ways. I don't know, because it's because the movies and other things that they were made, and Bridge Too Far and those kind of movies that make them big heroes. They show the airborne landings, but they have been paratroopers. They've been the thing that is something that is to be. So I feel that the country, the world has benefited from having a strong Russia. The world didn't have a third world war because of the strong Soviet Union, because of the veto power that is there. And we have to acknowledge, like I as an Indian, I come from a mechanized infantry battalion, and I've chosen to learn Russian because it was a thing. I remember reading Soviet land magazines and other things, Sputnik and other things coming. The fact is that I come from Kerala, where Russian culture, and we read a lot about War and Peace and Tolstoy, and it's a very active culture. So the world doesn't realize how much the peace that has been preserved here, the outbreak of Third World War, and how much the world needs a strong Russia today, in terms of being able to stand up to, it has to be a multipolar world, and I think that is, and in acknowledging the contributions of countries like India, countries and Russia, which actually took the capture of Berlin, is actually owned to them, but quickly the narrative was changed. Like it was. But the fact is that this history has to be acknowledged rapidly. So that distorted history that we've also suffered from. Indians also suffered from a distortion of the history. It's called, there are a large number of historians, they say, not historians, who distort the history to suit a particular narrative. That has to be recognized, and I'm thankful to you, Ambassador and Admiral Zadorin, for inviting me personally.
Thank you.
It's very nice.
Thank
To
you.
testify to our understanding the importance of India's contribution to the emerging world order, including I should underline that we are supporting of India's claim of India's desire to become a permanent member of the United Nations Security Council. That's one of the keys of our position. Begin, please.
So definitely, and you mentioned that India suffered from the distortions of history and perhaps continues to suffer from that, and there is a big debate. Colonel Shailendra Singh, may I please request you to share your thoughts on the article, on the relevance of the war today and the importance of it for framing and forging the current international arena and the international relations.
His Excellency Nikolay, Kudashev, and the distinguished host of the Russian embassy, thank you very much for inviting us to take part in this. I'll first, limit my opening remarks to President Putin, because this is not an article. Let me tell you, this is a book by itself. You don't have to read the number of 20 pages in it. You have to go by the matter in it. And if I can say so, this heading displays the character not only of that man, it also displays the character of that country. When you say shared responsibilities, this is amazing. This word conveys everything what Russia is all about. They are not into anything for self-glory. But what they are talking about is that whatever we do, it has got an implication worldwide. And when you say again, and our future, just imagine, he's talking about not only the future of Russia, he's talking about the world. And that is why this particular article from my side draws a very specific importance on the 75th anniversary of the Victory Day. I think with the embassy we had planned a lot of things which we could have done even in Delhi. We were wanting to do in Delhi also, we had arranged everything. But well, COVID has done something different. But notwithstanding, we still had that parade, and I can very proudly say that our contingent which went there, I think performed outstandingly well. There were part of criticism that yes, probably where China is taking part, where we should take part or not, it doesn't make difference. When you are not guilty, you are prepared to go anywhere. And when we go to Russia, we go to our old friend. We go to that country which has contributed in so many ways to us. So as far as I am concerned, this article I think is a landmark by itself. It shows the steel in that man, President Putin, which he is conveying to the world, that there is no point that you only think about yourself. From every operations, every day of our past history, we have a learning for the future. And if we cannot have a learning for the future to make it better, I think somebody has faltered somewhere very badly. Maybe as a national character, maybe as an individual, or even as a president. It is amazing. I have saluted this long back. The way Russians taught the world that if you want, you can stop anything, you can make anything happen. So I don't give any credit to any one leader in that or 10 leaders in that. I salute that character of that country where they had a social ethos, they had that courage, they had their courage of conviction that no, if something is wrong, we will stop it. And if Nazi and fascism was wrong, they stood up to stop it. Maybe at a cost doesn't make difference. But you know what happens? It exactly happens the way it is happening now in India and China. India today has taught the world, conveyed to the world, if you stand up against anybody, you can still win. There is no monopoly of anybody in the world that yes, he'll have his way. China now, the USSR of earlier time, taught the world, you may be small, you may be big, you may be not so developed, you may not have anything, but if there is a resolve, if there is a character of that nation where the public rises up, everybody, it's so amazing to see the awards going into lakhs and lakhs. I was taking a lot of pride that our two boys got Red Star. The Order of Red Star coming to Indians. And by the way, for what? Well, again, amazing character of the Russia, I must say. I must tell you this. Amazing character of Russia that they gave this Order of Red Star to those two individuals who were not fighting. They were only bringing the supplies. and they were bringing in supplies in time. A distance which was otherwise expected to take maybe a week's time, they were covering it in 3 days, which amounts to what? A continuous movement. And through what? Through terrain where the temperature was varying from something like 40 to 45 degrees in India and going up to minus 19 while you are crossing the passes. In 3 days' time, they were going through a variation of temperature by more than 87 degrees. It's not normal. No support line. You are repairing your own vehicle. You are actually probably fighting those thieves who were en route trying to extract money from you or stop the supplies or blackmail you for that. And this supply reaches. Hats off to Russia. They acknowledge it. That yes, had these supplies not reached, maybe the result of the complete battle would have been different. It took a turning point, and what a beautiful turning point. Amazing. This I think this has no parallel, where supplies have been given the highest award of a country. Hats off to the people who thought of it, and that too when those two boys were not there. They got it after a year. And I must share it with His Excellency the Ambassador, that sir, those two boys, one was a prisoner of war, and he was most popular with Russians, not for the fight which he did there. Amazing, sir, for giving those cigarettes to the Russians, which was so precious to them. And he has written that, he is given out in an interview also, that during that time, for Russians, the Nazis had a different camp. There was a fencing in between, but they were kept on the other side, and they were always at a disadvantage and mistreated by the Nazis. Why? Because Nazis knew that if at all anybody will fight them out, it would be probably Russians, because they triggered from there. You see, contributions can be by anybody, but who stands up to take that brunt is what President Putin is trying to bring out, that yes, when we were having a shared responsibility at that time, let us have a shared responsibility for our future. I think I can only say hats off to such an article, and I salute the President that he has taken out so much time, thought to write it. Congratulations to him.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much for your remarks. Indeed, you mentioned the episode of Brotherhood in Arms, where directly the Red Army and Indian Army troops have coordinated. As a fact, despite they were not in combat, but this Red Star Order is having also its significance, because it is designed to also contribute to those who contribute to strengthening of the defense. And that's the Indian Army has done in a most courageous way and with all the dedication. So thank you very much.